Hello everybody, welcome to my channel, or mostly welcome back to my channel. I was in the middle of these cards when I hit a technical difficulty, and I still had 2 cards to go in sort of the series of what I was converting each card base to. So I cut the video short. It was actually quite long, and I don't like to run my videos too long, if I'm honest. So it ran till I got to the end of this card, but now I want to go back and do sort of a part 2 of the same series. I will link the first video in the bottom here because there was some things that I did which I described as I went along, which I don't necessarily really want to repeat if you're following through the series. So this was the card that I had made, and it is just a side flap card where the piece was cut off. This piece came from this punch out piece, and the next card I'm going to show you uses the other section of it. So I had cut them apart, put one on here, so I'll pop that off to one side, and then this is the piece that we are using. So we've got the overlay piece. I've got a piece which I had 2-step stamped and done with markers because that's going on here. And then I am going to use the modern oval punch and just punch out an oval. This was actually the piece of cardstock that I had shown all the 2-step stamping pieces on. So we're getting ourselves a little oval. And what I want to do is I want to sponge the edge of this with the Berry Burst. So let me just go ahead and do that first, because Berry Burst is a very juicy ink. And what I'm going to do is I've taken a quarter sponge, which are really old, and cut them, and then if you use the flat edge you can go round and just catch, so it just gets a little bit of color all around. If you try and sponge it with a rounded sponge, it tends to be a little bit, you know, it squidges into the middle. So I've had those little sponges forever, which is probably why little dried out pieces are falling off. But anyway, Berry Burst, quarter of a sponge, give this a little bit of edge. Now, the cards, as I showed in the first video, they come 2-sided, which is unbelievably fabulous. So this was the card that I had made on the first section, and I had this back piece left over. So what I'm going to do is take this back piece and cut it up. Now, here's a little trick. I'd actually cut that piece off so it wasn't the full 4 1/4, it was only 4 1/8, and I don't know if you can see in the light. On the back of here there was an extra little 1/8 of an inch, which actually helps sometimes, but it was folded. So in order to get rid of a fold, as long as it hasn't been folded and the fibers haven't been broken, you can just push from behind and it will actually push out. I mean, you can still see there's a hint of a score line, but it's so gentle it wouldn't really notice. And then the other thing, of course, would it really be a Paper Pumpkin alternate video if it didn't have a ZZ fold in it? It's sort of become my signature Paper Pumpkin something. So 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4, but also scored at 2 1/8. Or you can just fold your cardstock in half and then fold the front back on itself. So this is making the basis for it. And then because we've got this lovely little piece of extra left over, I'm just going to, this is 2 1/8. So I'm going to fill it full actually, and I'm going to cut this at 2 1/8. Sometimes we cut it down so it's a layer on the piece. This I'm going to fill the whole thing. So I'm lining the paper trimmer up at 2 1/8 and just cutting that piece off. And then this one is actually 2 1/4, and you'll see where the plus of that comes in just a little moment. So what we need to do is we need to stick this to here on the front. So we'll bring in rolling adhesive, and then what we need to do is stick this to the edge of the card. So we'll stick it to the fold, and as I usually say, I like to put something dark underneath so I can see where the edges are. So we will attach this to it, and as I've said in previous videos, it's always a good idea to start at the fold, because if there's any overhang, it's on the open end and it's a lot easier to trim than to try and trim a fold and worry that you might slice it. So that is going on the front of our card, just like that. And then this piece is just going on the inside. So that's pretty easy. Again, I'll just do it, but what I'm doing is I'm using the piece that got where it was cut, because if you are ever doing it with designer series paper that had a pattern, it's nice to have the flow of the design. Of course, there is no design on gold splashes, but that's just a handy tip. And then we will line this up with the edge of here. And having that extra little piece, it really doesn't matter. It's not as important. I don't want to make out like it's a big deal, but it just gives you a little bit of extra. You can see that little 1/4 inch gives a little bit of extra, and you don't get any of the inside peeking out. So that is the ZZ. This one we are just going to stick on the top and ZZ style. We can still do it because we can, obviously it's going to line up in that corner. We can line this corner up down here, and we know this is the area that we can't put any adhesive, otherwise it would stick your card down. So we can just put adhesive on those edges, just where they need to be. And then we know everywhere else can have the sticky. And I'm just doing it on my silicone mat, because putting adhesive on a sticky edge like that, you can see it carried over. So now we can pop this in the top corner. Oops, again, I'm a lefty. Laughing at myself because I did watch my first video before the technical difficulties came along and unhinged me. I said, oh, I'm such a lefty, I can't use my left hand. Well, duh. Talk about a contradictory statement. I'm not very good with my right hand, as you probably guessed. But like I say, I was starting to unravel a little bit by then, and I was like, oh, help me, help me. So we're going to pop this onto here, and then we're going to add this to the edge. And what I want is this to come down to the bottom of the card and go up. So what we have to do is we have to put this oval on, again ZZ fold style, so there's not very much of it actually gets adhesive attached. So we can pop that on there, and you can see we haven't overhung that part. But remember I said I was doing it so I could let the Berry Burst Juicy ink pad dry out a little bit. I can see what I've touched on the edges has come on here. It doesn't matter, it just adds to the pinkness of it. And then what we need to do is attach this here so that this little edge can go down. So what I'm going to do is, I can see more or less that I only can put glue down here and around, because we do not want it, of course, to be over here, because it will do the same trick and close the card. So all of this leaf, all of the stalk, and just a little bit of the back and the front. We're just got to sort of leave a triangle in the middle. So let me just, all right, so we can put a little bit here and a little bit here. It needs to go all the way down the stalk, and we know this can have a good dot of glue, because all we want to accomplish is that we don't stick the card down. And there is no glue on that little area. I mean, this will fold open, but it just follows the theme through. And then last but not least, we need to pop a greeting on, and we will do it in the green. And again, watching myself through, I didn't want to start the whole video over because I was so close to the end. And it said, I think I'm going to do the green, but I'm not going to use the mossy meadow. Well, hello, Alyson. Mossy meadow is green. So forgive me my two little transgressions. And then we can just pop the greeting on there. And that is our ZZ full card. Lots of space on the inside for writing, but it's got this lovely gold theme that follows through. This matches because it's got the two-step stamped and huffed. So that's the other card. And then last but not least is this one, which uses the other part of the card when we cut it in half, and then we cut the back into half. This one I'm actually leaving the full size. So this is 4 1/4 by 2 3/4, because this piece is 4 1/2 by 4 1/4. So this is actually going to stick onto the front of here. So we'll do that first. And again, it's the same trick that when you're sticking something on, stick it to, oops, stick it to the fold. And I'm not doing white on white, so I've got a little bit more of a chance of seeing where this one is landing. So if we put it all on, we can see this is level at the top, and then, I mean, there's a hair's breadth at the bottom, and then if you need to, you can go along and trim it off with your snips or your scissors. I'm using my scissors because my snips are packed away because I'm going to a stamping event this weekend. So there we have it. So now what we need to do is we can pop this on. And again, we're using the same happy birthday concept with the lovely little strip, which came out of textured note dies. This one, which we got out of the 1/2 inch piece. And it's using my lovely little cut piece out of the happy birthday from It's Your Birthday from 2005 wooden stamp, given a new lease of life. So we'll stamp it in the berry burst onto the little piece. Look at that. You see, if I hadn't have done one, you know full well it would have been dodgy, but the reason I did one is in order to get such a skinny stamp to make sure it goes in the middle is the whole here's one I did earlier. So here's one I did earlier that I didn't need. So again, we're going to put dimensionals on the back of here, but I think, whoops, I'll use some bigger ones this time. Last time I used little ones and there was so many of them to peel off. I'll put 2 little ones on the point, one on that point, one on there. I've probably ended up with the same amount, they're just different sizes. But anyway, so we'll peel those off quickly. Come on. And And actually I'm going to stick this to the card because it's easier to stick a flat surface down than it is one that has dimensionals. Of course it's possible, it's just easier. And why would you not if you can take the easy way out? So I'm putting this on so there is an even layer all the way around, and then we can stick our lovely piece on its dimensionals, and then we will pop 3 little dimensionals along the back length of this one. Make sure they're all free and sticky, or free and clear to be sticky. And there you have it. So again, it's got the gold. I don't feel that it needs sequins on it necessarily, but that is the 3rd card using this one because I cut the pieces in half. So now let's bring them all back in. So we've got the 2 lovely Timid Tiger ones. We've got the 2 lovely gold diamond ones. And then we've got these 3 that I made from the pieces. So phew, 2 halves, 2 goes at it, and a little breather for my nerves in between, but we did it. So as always, directions and dimensions will always be on my blog. So that's just a given. Don't forget to subscribe, ring the bell so you know when I've put some more out. Thank you in advance if you feel I'm worthy of a thumbs up. If you have a question or a comment, pop those in the box below. There will be more coming because I've still got an awful lot of this kit left. I'm just going to go and have a cup of tea now and relax and gather myself. These 2 videos will be linked to each other. The first part will be linked to the second part linked back to the first part. If you're watching the second one, I would suggest you go back and watch the first one because it shows how we came across all these pieces that we had done. So again, thank you so much for your patience. I'm looking forward to doing some more for you. And in the meantime, thanks for watching.